around and understand.
I was at the bottom, man, when I got into that study. It saved my life. I was having robust suicidal ideation every day for at least a year and a half right prior to that. And when I saw the study and written about in the San Francisco Chronicle, I thought, man, that might save me. I mean, I might be able to pivot my entire life on this. I was swinging for the fences. So when people talk about intentions going into psychedelic therapy, my intention was to live or die.
Welcome to the Worth the Fight podcast, where we bring you powerful conversations surrounding the sensible and therapeutic use of psychedelics and plant medicines towards healing trauma. I'll introduce you to guests who, through their own personal journey and transformation, tell the Worth the Fight story. I'm your host, Matt Simpson, author of Worth the Fight, Acting for a Better World, a guide to spirituality, psychedelic medicines, and overcoming trauma. Thank you for listening.
My next guest on the Worth the Fight podcast is Saul. I met John a few months back in Los Angeles. John is doing very inspiring. He's got an extremely inspiring story. He's doing great work in the integration space, the psychedelic integration space. John has the unique distinction of going through the MAPS, MDMA-Assisted Psychotherapy clinical trials. He was in a phase 2 study that we'll be talking about. As we've talked about numerous times with prior guests, MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, is in phase 3 clinical trials with our federal government and is likely to be a legal medicine in the next few years as they have a cure for PTSD. Just last week, I believe, it was a few weeks back, that MDMA-assisted psychotherapy was approved for expanded access, which means that people with life-threatening illnesses can have access to this and kind of take their own risks without it being a fully approved FDA drug. But very amazing things are happening right now. Lots of progress. So much to be excited about right now. And John has a wonderful story, an uplifting story. He was knocking on death's door and had the opportunity to heal in this profound manner that we're just now starting to wrap our hands around and understand how this process and protocol really works. And he's a living example of this therapy and what it can do. John is a great guy. We've had a few meetings and getting together, and he's full of life and love and energy and positivity. And it was just such an honor to have him, to have that conversation with him a few weeks back in Los Angeles. I guess it was a few months now. Yeah, I can't wait to share with y'all this really uplifting story of overcoming and John's spot-on observations about the power of integration and grounding these energies and pointing them in the direction of service. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Saul. Thank you so much for listening.
John, how has MAPS's MDMA-assisted psychotherapy impacted your journey?
Right off the bat, it saved my life. And I was in a phase 2 study of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy, and I got into the MAP study 2015, August of 2015. And the reason I got into the study was I had there was a small group in Marin County, California, and it was an off-label study. The MAPS, is leading the charge through the FDA process, mostly with PTSD, and the combat veterans are kind of the face of this movement in terms of the MAPS MDMA-assisted psychotherapy study. But they wanted to do an off-label study, of which they've done several. And I was in a group that, in order to get into the study, you had to have had a life-threatening illness or have a life-threatening illness. So it often gets confused with the Johns Hopkins study, end of life or hospice, therapy with psilocybin. This is just, you had to have had a life-threatening diagnosis of some kind. Most of the participants, I believe, were cancer patients who had pushed it into remission. I have Scleroderma, which is an autoimmune disease, kind of a cousin to fibromyalgia or lupus. It is life-threatening, definitely, and it did almost kill me. I was diagnosed in January of 2013. My first symptoms were back in 2012, and so it was quite a long diagnosis. Long story short, it almost killed me, and I was completely drained of energy. I basically operated my business from the confines of a beanbag chair for 3.5 years.
Thank you so much for sharing this. And again, I'm super grateful to have you here on the show. Was this for existential distress? The guise of the study, I just want to make sure that we're clear for the audience.
Yes, it was. And the official title of the study was MDMA-Assisted Psychotherapy for the treatment of anxiety due to life-threatening illness.
Okay, gotcha.
And one of the best things about this was I think we took care of the fear of dying in the first couple hours of the first MDMA session, and the rest was anxiety due to having chosen life instead of death. I was at the bottom, man, when I got into that study. It saved my life. Wow. I was having robust suicidal ideation every day for at least 1.5 years right prior to that. And when I saw the study and written about in the San Francisco Chronicle, I thought, man, that might save me. I mean, I might be able to pivot my entire life on this. I was swinging for the fences. So when people talk about intentions going into psychedelic therapy, my intention was to live or die.
Abundance or bust, all in.
All in, yep. And so I was on the team, with my two fantastic therapists, Phil Wolfson and Jelaine Andrews, who've been doing this stuff for a long, long time. Back in the early days too, before prohibition of MDMA, in fact. So I had two of the best therapists.
Back in the 80s, right?
Yep, that's right.
That was when it was declared illegal, back in 84 or 85?
85, 86, I can't remember exactly the year.
But it had been used in therapeutic settings for some time, correct?
For sure. Couples therapy, generally. So I was in the presence of a grand master that had the history of this stuff. In fact, one of Dr. Wolfson's best friends had been Sasha Shulgin. Mm-hmm. So I got to have my MDMA-assisted psychotherapy experience at the private house with photos of my therapist with Sasha Shulgin around the room. And it was I can't even put words to it. It was a profound experience, and it allowed me to pivot what was the end around to choosing life and coming out into the world with, an empathetic heart and quite a lot of health improvements, which is
You're looking great, yeah.
Pretty involved to say,
Yeah.
How that worked. People say, well, how are you 90%? I'm 90% in remission from the scleroderma. And it doesn't have anything to do with Western medicine. It's basically a large kind of rounded rollout of my own therapy, which is sleep hygiene, community and social activity, repurposing my career and my life, moving, 500 miles south, starting, refreshing my relationship with my parents. I adjusted a personal relationship that I was in, partner relationship.
A lot of self-love there.
Yeah. And I closed a business, actually. I had a yacht brokerage up in Marin County that I ran for 10 years, and it was getting more and more successful. It had started in the bottom of the economy, of course, but it was killing me. It was too much stress, and it wasn't in line with the work. So during the MDMA sessions, I was instructed to dismantle that business, and I was instructed on what changes need to be made in my life, and my therapist begged me.
When you say instructed, just for my audience, you mean just from your inner guidance or...
That's right. Yeah. I'm sorry. The backing up a little bit, the therapy is based on the participant or the patient unlocking along with the therapist and with the medicine, with the container and with the protocol, unlocking your inner healer, which is your own doctor within yourself. You discover that, and then you'll take advice from that doctor. And then, of course, when you're tripping, it's like it can seem like you're talking to an entity, getting instructions. And the therapists, fortunately, are writing the stuff down. They begged me not to make any major life changes for 3 or 4 months after the study, but I started dismantling my business the next day after my last session.
It was very clear to you.
Yeah, very clear. And I said, I'm not waiting for anything. I've got to do this. It was life or death for me, It wasn't easy coming out of the study. That's a whole nother story, though,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to get into that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's I haven't told my story in a little while. I've done some talks, so I'm a little rusty with it. But it's if people have asked me, you know, John, if you could go back 5 years, 6 years, well, no, it's going on 7 years now. Geez, if you could go back and not have this life-threatening illness, you know, come down on you, would you change it? And I wouldn't. I would not change a thing, because I'm not the same person, and life is not easy, but it's quite exciting. And
this challenge and this obstacle that you've pushed through has informed your new path and your journey and being of service to other people and paying this forward. You know, we talked about that powerful Stoic quote: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." I think that was Marcus Aurelius who had said that, and it's so true. I mean, you obviously pushed through this big challenge. You were all in, abundance or bust, in figuring out a solution, a long-term solution to health and vitality, which you've done. You're very alive and vibrant, and you know, I applaud that courage, and I think this is just another testament to the power of these medicines to not only heal, but to inform a greater life purpose.
Yeah, it has defined my purpose, and that's it's a it's a play on the word remission. Repurposed my life. I got a new mission. Remission, yeah, and you know, there's some funny stories in there as well. For example, the therapist I was in the study, just to give some background too. I was in the placebo group, which means my first two, what we call overnight sessions or MDMA-assisted sessions, were blinded, right? And they were I didn't know it at the time. It was double blind. So the good news is that I got an extra about 8 weeks of therapy before I received the MDMA sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that I got in the placebo, I kind of messed up their data a little bit. I was in the placebo sessions. They're double blinded. And I was withdrawing from opiates. I'd been on opiates for 3.5 years necessarily. Mm-hmm. And they got me through 3.5 years of this disease, which is quite painful. And I was able to take them on the clock and operate a business, and and they did like what they needed to do. Yeah. It was exactly Percocet, mm-hmm. And I broke them in half and took them on the clock and I was quite highly functional with those. But I did try to taper off on my own a couple of times, and I thought, that's going to be rough. I felt the withdrawals, and I could not discern the difference between the physical pain and discomfort from my disease and the discomfort from withdrawal, because I'd been on opiates since day one of this diagnosis. And so to get into the study, I had to clear my bloodstream of the opiates to get off them, and I was given a tapering schedule, and I thought, I can't do it that way. I just tore up the tapering schedule and I threw it in the trash, and I put my the opiates that I had remaining in the bottle, in the prescription bottle, up in plain view where I could see them, and I just stood them off for about 3 weeks.
Wow!
Before we
commenced
the study, and that was my admission ticket into the study.
It
was to get off the opiates.
Okay.
That was my
so
personal. You had
some good, powerful motivation to do that.
That's correct. Yeah, and so it did. Your brain isn't making its own pain medicine when you get off the opiates. So obviously, I was in severe pain, and then going through the placebo sessions, which amounted to about 8 weeks. I kind of had a oversped feeling, kind of an anxious oversped feeling, as you do when you're withdrawing from opiates. So I mistook that for being MDMA, and they asked me if I thought I had been dosed with MDMA after these sessions, or if I'd had a placebo. And I said, for sure, you dosed me. For sure I got MDMA, no doubt in my head. And then when they unblinded it and said you were in the placebo group, you had a sugar pill, I could not believe it, and I messed up
sugar pill and niacin.
And
niacin, which creates a flushing effect. So there's something there, but right.
That's right. I used to know exactly what the ingredients were in the. I've since forgotten. Okay. Long story short, is that once I got the MDMA in my bloodstream, and that was in the third session, there was no doubt in my mind. And then my curve, if you look at my data, from my outcome from the study, I did make great progress, which in the placebo section, but that's testament to how good the container and the therapists are. But once I got the medicine, my curve really takes off for the better. When you look at the data and looking back. Not to say that, life was easy coming out of the study, because it was not. Enacting these life changes was incredibly trying, very, very difficult.
Can you bring our audience into the healing experience and how we talked about this in more depth? If anybody's looking for a deeper dive or more information on this, you can go back to podcast number 11 with Rick Doblin. But I think that this is a fascinating angle from someone who has participated in these profound MAPS studies that are poised right now in phase 3 clinical trials with our federal government to shake up and change the model we have for healing and pushing forward this psychedelic assisted therapy.
That's right. And so the idea is that we are healing based on an experience that we have. It includes the therapist, it includes the medicine, the container, the protocol, and it includes a wholehearted participation in the inner will of the participant. Mm-hmm. And so people ask me, well, John, you're 90% in remission from scleroderma, or systemic sclerosis, which is a life-threatening illness. And do you attest, how can you attribute any of that to the study, having come from the study? And it's kind of hard to describe, but it was, for example, halfway through the study, I had a friend, and I'd been a long-distance runner, running a lot of half marathons and a few marathons here and there. But during the study, and I hadn't done anything physical in terms of physical activity for 4 years. I hadn't done any yoga. I wasn't even able to do a push-up. I'm quite athletic. Because of the illness, mm-hmm. Right. And a friend of mine went back to Maryland to run an ultra. And she wrote my name on her knuckles in Sharpie, JOHNSAUL, and she posted it on Facebook and said, "Hey, buddy, you're running this ultra with me." And I followed her through the ultra. She would even text me during the run at night, like, "I don't think we're going to make it." And I would say, "Come on, get out, blister or not, keep running, and we're going to do it." And it inspired me to the extent that during the study, I decided I got to get a pair of running shoes. I haven't run in years. I just got to see what my body can do. So the MDMA-Assisted Psychotherapy gave me the courage and the wherewithal to decide to buy that pair of running shoes. I haven't bought a pair in 5 years.
Wow.
And I took a trail run over around Mount Tam, and it hurt. I mean, I hadn't done anything for years. It was a mile and a half walk, jog, trot. And I have a photo actually of after that run of me flipping the bird to my running shoes, flipping off my running shoes in the camera frame, like, "F you, that hurt." Mm-hmm. But it was all tongue in cheek. My body responded so significantly. Wow. I just started taking short runs during the study, and
that was the catalyst.
That was the catalyst, and my body started responding and demanding different types of nutrition that I wasn't giving it.
Get you back on track to do all those things that align
right.
with a healthy, active lifestyle.
That's right.
A virtuous cycle of good, perpetuating more good.
You got it exactly. And get the rest of the opiates out and finish the withdrawal, running on the trail. And so it inspired a lot of different changes where my body really responded. And I was coming, awake. Mentally, also emotionally, spiritually, coming in touch with my heart all at the same time, seeing things with a different perspective, and feeling the gravity of the human condition, and feeling the weight of the human condition, and empathy and love just spilling out of my heart for humanity. And I was just at times distraught at what's going on in the world during these sessions. And I was advised by my therapist to siphon back some of that love that I'm pouring outward and give that back to myself. So I did that in all different ways. And my body responded significantly. 8 months after my first run with those running shoes, I ran a half marathon up in Humboldt under the redwood trees.
Wow, quick progress.
On a sunny day in the rain, and it was one of the most magical experiences I've ever had in my life. And one of my social and emotional supporters, a good friend of mine, paced me through it, and it was just a fantastic experience. And just went from there, I got certified to teach aerial yoga, which stretches out my myofascial tissue. My master teacher, she hung me in this yoga swing and pried my body apart for a year, stretching my myofascial, so where I couldn't stand up straight for 2 years because my front of my body was so tight, and I could now do back bends and do all sorts of different things with yoga, which is very helpful.
Indeed, absolutely. Well, you had mentioned your mission. What is your mission now that you've healed and are in 90% remission? And how has this healing informed the work that you're doing now?
I was on the couch. I was prone during the study. I think it was my second or third session, and this familiar voice or entity came to me, and then who knows? It could be just I don't know what it is. It's just yourself, but there's definitely a conversation, an intuition that comes. And I was just minding my own business with my eye shades on, listening to the music, and a voice came to me and said, "Hey, John." I said, "Yeah, you'd be really good at helping people." And I said, maybe. He's, okay. And I said, "You could answer a calling to help people. You can do that with your life. You'd be good at that." And I said, let me think. Okay. All right, I'll help people. I will help people. Show me what it looks like. And I have 4 terms, and I read out a list of 4 terms that I wanted in exchange for helping people, and about 20 minutes later, this entity came back and said, "John," and I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you may not get your terms, but you still have a chance to answer a calling." And I said, "Fuck it, sign me up. I'm going to help people. Show me what it looks like." And it took about
this is during the therapeutic session.
During a therapeutic session, yes. And so I signed my mental signature, my spiritual signature to a contract to help people. All I asked of the universe was to show me what it looks like. And it took about 2 years, a little longer than I really expected, to have the thing finally take shape and take form and get a vision for helping people. But the long and short of it is that I met one former participant from the MAP study right after the study, and we were struggling with life. I met purely by accident. It was at a fundraiser, and we exchanged phone numbers.
You had healed and shed a lot of the existential challenges, but you still were in need of more therapy, or more, not necessarily therapy because the protocol ends, but more support.
Support, you got it. And it's in the coming out of the MAP study, you have it depends on which study you're in, but you may have a 2-week, a 2-month, a 6-month, and a 1-year follow-up. And it's mostly to collect data and surveys.
So it's not the...
Yeah. My therapist made it clear that if I was in a crisis, I could call them. I did call on them a couple of times. But it's, when you're making that many changes, and you're set on making that many life changes as quickly as possible for survival, not just inspiration, but for survival, it can be pretty daunting. So support is necessary. So you're sort of launched out of this helicopter. And my analogy is you land on a skateboard going 50 miles an hour down a mountain road after the study. And it feels like, whoa, I'm seeing things quite differently, and I'm trying to make these changes.
But it's a lot still.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And so a couple of us got together on the phone for 2 hours every Sunday, sometimes 3 hours even, and supported each other through some family work, through some processing of resentment, mostly geared towards society and family. And, I had repositioned my identity. I'd cut ties with the obligation that I felt I had to impress society or impress my parents, and arrive at a place where I just don't care about that. It's not an easy process to say, don't give a shit about impressing anybody. I want to do work that is in line with my heart.
Beautiful.
And I won't settle for anything less, because if I do, it'll kill me. That's where I came from. So these phone calls turned into Skype and Zoom calls, and we added some additional MAPS. I call them MAPS grads, former participants from the study. And we really buddied up and helped each other through some tough stuff. And my goal was to grow that group and not be anything official, because I knew that was kind of impossible. But I could be a meeting place for people coming out of the study to at least fulfill a curiosity of what's everyone going through after the study. It's not all rainbows and bubbles. It's not necessarily easy, but it's profound.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're in whether you're in the 30% that still qualifies for PTSD or you're in the 70% that doesn't qualify on paper for PTSD, it doesn't matter. There will be some difficulties. And so I call them my call groups, but my online miniature integration groups, maximum of 5 people per meeting, went along, and then I expanded it outside of the MAPS group to people who maybe couldn't get into the study or people who are just doing self-examination in their own psychedelic work. And so we support each other through integration and preparation and harm reduction, education, and the self-examination process. And we don't give direct advice because we don't have any licensed clinicians on board. We don't have doctors there. We just relate our stories.
Listen, yeah.
And we listen
and share.
We hold the
Which
space.
is at the end of the day, like, all that freaking matters. Is just, I think at the end of the day, we just want to be heard. People want to be heard, and they want somebody who's present, listening, another human being, and they can tell them that they're not alone.
Yep. That's the gist of it. There's a need for it, and there's obviously a place for, if you got certain things going on, you got to find a clinician or a psychiatrist or doctor or, but we've had people in the middle of spiritual crisis come in our group, and I've watched somebody come forward and step up and buddy up with that person and support them and help them out of a bona fide spiritual crisis. And, we've had people come in with suicidal level depression, and we've rallied around them and encouraged them and helped them get into a ketamine clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Saved a couple lives that way, It's no joke. It's real life stuff. And part of the healing is helping others and supporting others and giving back and helping others up through that, that proverbial mountain trail behind you if you're cutting through the brush, Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's such a profoundly important. We did a whole podcast with Ryan from the Zendo Project about integration.
Ryan Beauregard.
Yeah. It was beautiful to hear his insight and his outlook, and it's such a profoundly important topic. And the book that I wrote, Worth the Fight, is a integration program. Is how do we maximize these peak experiences and point them in service to a better world, in service to living healthier and happier, stronger lives for ourselves, our loved ones, and our circles of influence. And I know from somebody who struggled immensely after having a profound psychedelic experience, healing with ayahuasca. I write this. I think I joke about this in the book. It's like you experience eternity in an hour, and then you have to go sit at your shitty fucking desk job. It's like, well, yeah, there's going to be some challenges, and I think that times are different now. As we're amping up, we're getting closer to legalization, and with MDMA-assisted therapy potentially in the next year or two, I believe. If things go as planned, and marijuana is medical marijuana is legal in 38 states, so times are changing. The narrative, this is something that we're talking about more out in the open. Education is forefront. So I applaud you for engaging this. It's not the sexiest work. It just integration. It's people don't want to. It's not something that is sexy, so it doesn't get talked about because it's the work. It's the hard part about this journey is digging in each day and engaging these practices that are not always fun, but to ultimately to integrate, which means to make whole these experiences. That's
right, and it's.
I went on a little tangent there. Sorry about that.
No, it's pertinent. It's not. You're right. It's not sexy work, but when you see somebody go from hit solid ground, hit pavement, and reach the bottom, and then the community rallies around, or the peer group, or whatever the case may be, rallies around and lifts them up, and you just witness them in a relatively short time make immense changes in their mental emotional structure, in their life structure. It'll bring a tear to your eye at the least. I mean, it's heavy, it's beautiful, and it is so rewarding. It's just unbelievable. And I think there's a lot of old therapists that are maybe opening up their mind to expanding the ways they do therapy, and there's some new therapists, obviously, like hammering through school right now, and they're going to be psychedelic therapists. I'm so excited for...
That's a big thing that's really alive right now. There's tons of people that are gearing up for this push. If indeed some of these forecasted legalizations with MDMA-assisted therapy and psilocybin-assisted therapy, there's going to be a massive need for people to engage this, to be on the healing side. Correct?
That's correct. Don't leave out cannabis. Cannabis-assisted therapy is profound as well, and it's exciting, and it's when people are new and starting to come in and do their self-examination and get ready for psychedelic work, I think it's a good idea, especially if you have some experience and you're in a position to give guidance and harm reduction pointers. It's
when you say harm reduction, can you
safety,
clarify that?
If you're going to do self-examination and roll out psychedelic work on your own, you did not get into any clinical trial, but you decided that it may be helpful to you. Really do some work and seek out. There's plenty of advice. There's plenty of good information out there.
Absolutely.
Whether harm reduction, like is in the compounds themselves, drug testing, like with dance safe, or you're at festivals, that kind of work with Zendo, people having difficult experiences, or you find yourself in a private gathering where someone's having a difficult experience. I mean, these medicines can be destabilizing. There's no doubt about it. I've seen it happen. There are also practitioners out there who are not entirely within integrity, so it's good to have people that are more experienced spot this and dispense these facts and this advice in a way that people won't get themselves in harm's way. I mean, this is really difficult work. There's high gravity. People's emotional well-being and their entire well-being are on the line when they pursue this work. So it's good to do the research, seek out the good information, get around people in the community, and find out who you can trust with good information before you roll this out, because it's no joke. It's the other thing is the psychedelic experiences within this work is exactly that. It's the work on a long arc of years. It's not just an overnight, some kind of a panacea, some kind of a cure. It's long hard work punctuated by accelerants in the psychedelic realm. So I think it's good to have a healthy, wholehearted approach to this and an open mind, but also be discerning about safety. It will, when you're ready, it will become obvious, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So with the integration groups that you hold, what are the core values that you bring to the integration, the online integration group calls?
We have a set of strict ground rules, so anonymity is at the top of that. We don't share each other's identities, or we don't identify people with stories. We're allowed to share concepts that we learn within those meetings outside of those meetings, but we can't identify. We do not identify. We commit to not identifying anyone. So it's anonymous. We have a rule about giving direct advice. So in other words, preceding a statement with, in my experience, what I found is that, as opposed to, I think you should do such and such, protocol, there is a rule about diligent space holding, listening, a non-judgment, and these have to be adhered to, or it's where the magic is. It's what allows people to feel safe and open up in these groups and share stories. We are allowed to buddy up. In other words, if you hit it off with somebody, you can go through the call facilitator and request somebody's contact info. So by permission, you can get in contact with somebody in the call group, and we've had long-term friendships made within these, or outside of these groups from within these groups. And the buddy system is really helpful. So two people become friends, and they can help each other through hardships, as well as celebrate the victories. And so adhering to the ground rules and not allowing judgment or not allowing somebody to dominate the conversation too terribly much. And the facilitator has the work cut out for them. Right now I'm the only facilitator in these. In fact, we don't even have a website for our call groups yet. It'll be called 3-Peer, THREE, and then PEER, 3-Peer Integration and Support. I do have a little website for the MAPS group, which is MDMA-Peers.com, MDMA Peers.
You're helping people that are finished through the MAPS trial.
That's correct.
That are looking for post-clinical trials support.
That's correct, right. So at a minimum, you come there with a curiosity. I would say 50% of the participants, at least that I've found and spoken with, are not interested in doing that or sharing their experience. They like to wrap it up kind of in a tidy way and chalk it up as to a profound life experience that they don't want to share beyond their friends and family. But I think the other 50% are interested in meeting their cohort, and at least on that level as a curiosity. And if you stick around, we go deeper, we get to know each other, we drive deep into support and emotional topics and space holding and harm reduction if that topic comes up. And then there's an even deeper level where if somebody decides that they want to be an advocate and talk to the media, we actually can provide some media coaching for people who have never spoken to the media about their experience and their life and expose this vulnerability. And the reason someone would need coaching.
Media coaching, like
if somebody wanted to talk to the media about their experience and advocate, the bottom line is to advocate for this therapy. Mm-hmm. The goal is to get insurance companies' attention and to get them start writing checks for this type of therapy in the near future.
So we need to start talking about it.
So if somebody wants to advocate,
the power story.
That's right.
Yeah, they
can use our peer support group as a platform to become an advocate. And the reason someone would need coaching is that they may not have the discernment yet to draw personal boundaries, and so we do mock interviews and coach them not on what to say, but more on what not to say in terms of violating their own personal boundaries. Getting information pulled from them that it's a one-way valve, right? Once the information's out there, it's like a tattoo. It's out there. So I think very easily somebody could come out of the study and overshare and then regret it. So we have people delineate and write down their personal boundaries, and then we coach them and try to throw them some curveballs so that they don't do something that they would feel emotionally damaged by. But if they, at the same time, they can go out, talk to the media, and advocate. So that's kind of the deeper goal of some of this stuff, and maybe neck and neck with just supporting people through hard times, making these major life changes that they don't feel lonely, and that it's impossible to do, or that they regret that they didn't make the changes that they thought would be beneficial after the study, and then they just let it peter out and don't do that. That can be disappointing too. So a peer support can serve as fuel to make these changes, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely integral part of this process. And I guess I was thinking about like the mechanism of so many of us that are struggling and have gone through, that ultimately sought out psychedelic healing to heal, largely perhaps not having that network of people. Like I think about myself, like I've had people, but I think it was my inability to share and to be vulnerable and to be open and honest and holding in all of that thought energy of past traumas in my nervous system. And eventually, we hit a tipping point, and then having the floodgates open, completely open with these psychedelic experiences, and then finding the balance of what works after. As we have these profound healing experiences, they shift us on a neurobiological level, and but then the experiences, they fade a bit, and that support is so important, and it's meant so much to me on my path, and the amazing beautiful souls that I've come across on these last many years that have been there and that are on a similar journey and a similar path. So it can't be understated for anybody that is interested in this type of healing, to the value of the buddy system and the value of finding people to keep in contact with, and to set up potentially calls like this, like the integration coaching that you provide is paramount.
That's right. You said it.
You had mentioned, we'll go back a little bit here, the inner healer. This is a topic that Rick had mentioned, and I write about in my book, and that's really that's the thing that's got me so gosh darn excited about this movement and the work that's being done with MDMA-assisted therapy, is that the data seems to suggest that there's an inner healer that comes online, because people are getting better outside. Although you talked about the struggles that you had, and I think that's part of getting better is struggling for a little while. But ultimately, when we're talking longitudinal, we're looking, years out, 3 years out, is that there's a higher percentage of people that are improving than the data would suggest after a year. So this is extremely encouraging. And and I feel the same thing anecdotally for with ayahuasca and some of these other psychedelic medicines, that once this intuition or inner healer or inner guidance comes online, that ultimately, we're making better decisions. I think we talked about that with the virtuous cycle of good perpetuates more good, and so on. Can you speak to the when you'd mentioned that you had a vision, or you had voices that had come through, how that was different than maybe any other times, or had you had experiences like that before, or spiritual experiences where this knowing? I think that's the difference between this experience that you're talking about. Is that there was a firm knowing. I mean, you said that you made a soul contract, and that my eyes perked up when, I know I'm getting really long-winded here on the question. I guess I'm shaping this question as I go here, but I had felt that same, and on my second ceremony with ayahuasca, that I made a similar soul contract. That I'm here to serve humanity at the highest degree possible, and pledged and committed my life to a life of service, and it appears as you've done the same. So the I guess the question is, have you had any other prior intuitive moments like that? And if so, what were they?
Well, sure. I mean, it's I think everybody's got this radar where if there's a gut sourced or a gut felt question, or if you're trying to make a decision about something, where information will come through, and we all have a radar for that. I mean, this particular psychedelic experience with, I think my dose was 187.5 milligrams of David Nichols built MDMA,
pharmaceutical grade,
on an empty stomach, at 9:30 in the morning, for goodness sakes. That bolsters your radar, and so these things can come through quite loudly, quite clearly, and that's why I think the therapists write the stuff down for you, and then
that's powerful.
Tell you to use a little bit of be prudent when you come out of the study in terms of making these changes. I think that's a good idea. That wasn't the way I could do it, but that said, since the study, I've had right before the study, I started a meditation practice, and I think that helped me inside the study, but it also continued after the study. And meditation is, I think, a key way to reinforce and bolster your internal radar for information. So if you're pondering something, what to do next, whether I need to do some more self-examination and psychedelic work, or whether I should forego, this work in favor of spending some time with some family or friends I haven't seen in a long time, or bond with people who are in your life that are getting older maybe or ill. These are kind of questions that come up, just for an example here, right? That solutions to decisions can be arrived at through a robust intuition that we can develop, like a muscle in the gym. We can develop those intuitive muscles, and it's just a better radar, and more open mind and more open heart, a desire to be led by something greater than ourselves, to contribute, in community. And if you look at my outcome data, I improved in the ensuing year after the study, and I think that they're finding the majority of the participants continue to improve after the study's over, in spite of the fact that there's no formal integrative structure in place. This is just us getting thrown out of the helicopter, like I used that example.
But there's a catalyst. There's some momentum. I think that is we're redirecting the trauma in the direction of health and well-being, and trusting in, that's our, sex and survival. Our survival impulse is our strongest evolutionary driver that drives and informs so much of our decisions. So, we're wired to just figure it out, at some level.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite Terence McKenna's recently. I like to listen to some of his stuff now and again. R.I.P. Terence McKenna. But he just talks about how the human species has survived, 6 ice ages or something like that. Like,
we've been through a lot.
Isolated
together.
And dwindled down to a few people and made it through, and now the population has grown and the ice has receded, and it's continuing to recede at too fast a rate. But we're on the shoulders of those who survived, and it's up to us to figure stuff out. That's one of the things that relates back to when I was talking about the gravity of the human condition. The factual part, not the emotional part, but it is pretty heavy stuff. But I think we're on the topic of the inner healer, and we've got a lot of evolution back there, and a lot of code within us that can be brought out just by these openings. This kind of work. And I think we're going to be pretty impressed with what happens in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of the human mental, spiritual condition.
I feel that strongly.
Yeah,
I really do. I think that we're on the cusp. I think that these medicines are exponential healing technologies. The science that underlies psychedelics, that underlies meditation, that underlies flow states is exponential. We've learned more about the brain in the last 10 to 20 years than we had the previous 2,000 years. And all of the signals are pointing towards, these tools being just that, tools that are coming online at a perfect time to help us solve some of these grand challenges that we have as a human family, the environmental challenges that we have, climate crisis, political challenges, social challenges. I am an eternal optimist who believes that we'll get this human experience and experiment figured out.
I do too. And don't forget, if all of that can be overwhelming, and if it's too overwhelming, my thing is just give a shit, right, about your fellow man. Just learn how to care about your fellow man.
Beautiful.
Learn how to pull a punch when you used to throw a punch. Just care, and I think that's one of the ingredients. I'm so fortunate to have gotten into that study. one thing my therapist brought in that was the magic ingredient that I think could be missing from some therapy sessions around the world is love. They brought genuine caring and love into the mix. And there was no doubt about it. When it's there's no doubt about it. It's truth, right? There's only truth in this room is one of the things that was said to me when I was, in the study. And I was about to, in the study, I'll tell you one more experience story. I was on the couch, and I was about to relate a little story, an anecdote to my therapist that I had been telling for a couple of decades or longer, 3 decades perhaps. And it had been embellished and overwrought, and it become really what boils down to a lie. It wasn't true, but I really believed in my head this story was true. I was about to relate this story, and before the story could escape my lips, I was going to tell this, time stopped in the room. I mean, literally dust froze in midair, and my therapist froze in place, and there was a little essential oil vaporizer. The steam from the vaporizer just stopped, and time stopped, and I felt like a little puppy who'd been caught chewing somebody's shoe up. Like I knew that something was amiss, and I got chilled to the bone. It scared the hell out of me, actually, and I was about to tell this story that wasn't true, that I thought was true, and time stopped, and this voice said, "There is only truth in this room." And I got chilled to the bone, and I thought, holy shit, that's right. I mean, that story isn't true. Holy smokes. And my therapist said, "Are you okay?" Everything started moving again. And I said, "No, I think I'm all right." I got a little scared there. And and I had to kind of digest it. I didn't even tell him what happened right away. I was just like, wow, there's only truth in this room, which brings me to the kind of one of the swag monikers of our 3 peer support groups, which is a party with the truth. Truth, and party with it, which just means, entertain the truth, beyond all else.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any other parting words? There's some beautiful wisdom that you've imparted, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing and your commitment to telling your story of overcoming, and the work you do in helping people integrate these experiences and walking this path with integrity, so other people can make sense of their healing experiences and how they can best utilize them for themselves, their loved ones, and their circles of influence.
I'd just say, if you're going to compete, in business or any other facet of life, compete in a healthy way, and put your competitive side to good use to healthy projects, and not projects in order to, just bolster your, the self-centered aims. Help each other out. There's an abundance of everything out there. Just help each other out, lift each other up, and stop beating the hell out of each other. Get off the high horse and get down and get your hands dirty. Help out. That's all I'd have to say.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again for sharing your wisdom and for taking this time.
Thanks, Matt.
Peace. This has been Matt Simpson of the Worth the Fight podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can learn more about our mission of hope and healing at worththefightbook.org. Please rate, review, and share this episode. Please help us expand our circle of influence and get these vital conversations out to our human family. Also, if you are in a financial position to support the show, you can help us push forward these conversations with monthly donations on Patreon. This podcast is a tremendous amount of work for me, and I have stellar guests in the queue. Please help if you can. Thank you for listening to this programming. Much love, y'all. Peace.